All right, Mono Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Liberty and Friends here on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. It is a Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Well, 3 minutes past 8. Apologies for the tardiness, but welcome to it. As always, this beautiful Zulu mug is on your screens for the next, let's call it 90 minutes or so, with this being the one long format show that I have here on the BDL channel. Remember, welcome to it. All you need to do, your only price of admission here on Liberty and Friends is for you to hit that like button. Come on, do it now. Whether you're watching this simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. Welcome to it. My name is Sihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Goodness me, what a wonderful Sunday. Is it not just a wonderful, wonderful Sunday? I had a great Sunday. I hope that is you guys had a fantastic Sunday. I got to meet a perfect stranger today, and it really has perked up and improved my mood. So with that being said, let's dig into the news that made, or rather the headlines that made the news week. What did you spot in the Newsweek this week that you might want us to maybe opine or chat about? Remember, Liberty and Friends is the one show where it's me, moi, Big Daddy Liberty, and of course, the Friends panel. Which is a revolving door of interesting South Africans from all walks who opine on issues that, of course, as I said, made the headlines in the week. I must put forward a few apologies. Some of my guests have fallen ill a bit, and I really am wishing them refuah shlema, or get well soon. Gabriel Crouse will not be joining us tonight, and the other guest, Koketso Resane, will be joining us a bit later this evening, perhaps in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. With that being said, hey man, let me bring on the guests that are here. A new face, or I shouldn't say he's new, but he's new to Liberty and Friends. I'm talking, of course, about Jonathan Wright. There he is. Jonathan, good evening, man.
Hi, good evening, Sihle. Thanks for having me here.
Excellent. Good to have you on, my brother. Super appreciate you on here. And of course, a face who is a firm favorite here on Liberty and Friends. I always see it in the comment section after every episode. I'm talking, of course, about Nolu Maki. There she is. Nolu, good evening, ma.
Hello.
Nolu, we missed you, half of you there, my bad, but you were muted.
Good evening, Sihle. Thank you for having me, as always.
Excellent. Welcome to it, guys. We're going to hop into it. And again, a reminder, we will be joined in a moment by our last panelist, Koketso, in the next 10 minutes or so. Jonathan, just a quick note, just be mindful of your sound. There's a little bit of interference in the background, hence I muted you, but let's get cooking. It's not too bad. Don't worry. It's not too bad. It is not too bad. So with that being said, guys, let's look at the week that was. On Wednesday on the Big Daddy Liberty Show, we discussed what is clearly the topical issue of the week. That is a one golden boy of a ANC president, a one Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, who this week and throughout the course, of the week, revelations started coming out of perhaps dodgy dealings on his one mega farm estate. That's the Pala farm, with the allegations going according to a one Arthur Fraser. We'll get into him in a moment. He's a rather dubious character in and of himself, as I put my phone on silent. A one Arthur Fraser, as I said, alleging that the president had millions stolen on his farm, which is a crime that most South Africans endure. That is theft, not of. We don't all have millions, but definitely we all endure theft in this country, given the crime rates. But here's the kicker. Here's where it got really interesting. It wasn't necessarily the theft. itself, but the circumstances around the theft, and of course the president's alleged response. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you. You know, the alleged response here stupefied many a person. You know, here's a president who's alleged to have, instead of gone to the police to file a case of, you know, theft or burglary or whatever the case may be, went to his head of security in the Presidential Protection Unit and basically said, hey man, form I'll call it a squad, if you will, pursue the people who found this and get me my money back, rogue style. Jonathan, again, there's two things I want you to sort of opine on here. The irony of that, you know, that the political elites in this country seemingly have the best and have access to the best of the state that is actually guaranteed or should be guaranteed to everybody. But for the rest of us, we simply don't have a policeman on call, do we?
No, we don't. I just go back a little bit. You mentioned audio in the background. I don't know what it is because I can't hear it.
It is perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm not necessarily surprised that he went to his head of security first about such a thing. He's surrounded by these people. Seems like a pretty natural thing to do. It's like, hey, you know a bit about the police stuff. You're my security boss. Do something. What I think is strange is what happens after that. And as you say, the way it unfolded and how we have these allegations of as you say, a squad pursuing these men basically to the Namibian border, picking them up, and then there's a charges of kidnapping and I think even some torture. How true they all are, we can only speculate. But the fact that such a quote-unquote squeaky clean man, the hope and savior of South Africa, the only hope for the ANC and the only hope for South Africa, how this could all happen to him, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm so shocked. I totally didn't see that coming.
And you know, this is what makes it funny. As I just bring us back on screen here, you know, this is what makes it funny. But again, guys, you know, it's not funny, haha. It's actually funny, like, oh my goodness, we're in deep trouble here. I nearly swore. We're in deep doo-doo here in the country. Here's a guy who, Nolu, was sold to us as Jonathan rightly brings up. He was sold to us as, oh, finally, they said, you know, here's a guy who is, he's the savior of South Africa. He's a businessman, Nolu, we were told. And of course, with him being a businessman, he understands the challenges of South Africa. The mainstream and the corporate media, rather, told us. And of course, the political elites told us. He's not Jacob Zuma, they said. He'll fix the administration. He is, as I see in the comment section here, squeaky clean.
I remember the time when he got in, and my grandmother, she is a super fan of ANC because, hey, umbutho osikhululeleyo, the party that has liberated us. And then because I'm a child, I just couldn't hold myself, and I said, Makulu, nothing will change. Yes, he's got his money, but he's still ANC. And at that time, I didn't even know whether or not he was dodgy, as we've just seen right now. But as for me, I've seen this plague book for so long, as if I'm my grandmother's age. But I think by now, as young as I am, it was bound to happen. We've seen it already that Cyril Ramaphosa, as Mbeki's brother has said, he must be the most corrupt person we've ever encountered in the ANC. Of course, maybe that might sound harsh, but I don't think we will ever find anyone in the ANC whose hands are clean. And I have a friend who's part of the, I guess, whatever the party, and said it very clear to me that in the ANC, you can never survive if your hands are too clean. Because when your hands are too clean, that means you'll come for all of them. And we've seen it that Cyril Ramaphosa has not even been our president as a country. He's the ANC president. He doesn't care about us, and he cares about being loved by the cadres, right? So, it's quite funny. And I just think that it's all theatrics to me. Nobody who's sound enough to believe that Cyril had clean hands. It's just that our media played it to us, and we bought into it. So, yeah.
And again, you know, I want to shift a little bit, staying on topic, but shift a little bit of the focus here. I really want to dig deep on this notion of, you know, guys, we often hear in the mainstream media, really, the corporate punditry in this country, which is race obsessed. They'll often play up any and all issues generally as, oh, it's a race issue. It always boils down to a race issue. Those evil whites, Jonathan, who are hoarding all of the wealth and the resources and all the privileges because hashtag white privilege and, and all things that relate to Black people as and of pertaining to Black people are viewed through the prism of weakness and victimhood. I was surprised, Jonathan, that we didn't have an opinion piece by the likes of Eusebius Makaza telling us how the robbery in the farm gate at Palapala was a symptom of whiteness, or rather, sorry, this is how it would likely go if you listen to how these woke folk talk on time. I'm surprised you didn't get a piece saying, it is a symptom of internalized oppression and whiteness, and the specter of whiteness that Cyril would choose to go to his head of security, a white man, instead of the police, who are invariably, Black people, so to speak. Jonathan, I'm surprised we didn't hear these race-obsessed arguments around this issue.
All I can say is the white man made him do it.
Yeah.
I mean, well, how else could it happen? Like, how else are you going to tie whiteness into this sort of thing? When you started there, I thought for a second, like, what do you mean Eusebius Makaza hasn't said anything? He's been pretty active on social media from what I could see. And then you saw the comment about he hasn't tied it to whiteness. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, you got a point there. He hasn't done that yet. So, but, yeah, the race has to be in everything to sell. It makes clicks. I don't know who clicks on it. I don't know who reads this stuff. But apparently the media, the legacy media companies seem to think that it works, and it must, to a certain extent, for them to keep doing it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
Nolu, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, you get the crowd that says, "Remember, Cyril answers to white people." So truly, it is the white guy behind him that actually made him to be this dodgy. You know what I mean? Because Cyril is put there by white people. So how dare you secretly accuse him?
It's all of his co-workers from Lonman days. It's definitely them.
Wait, let me guess. Because I'm enjoying myself here. Let me keep playing the game. No, guys. Actually. Do you know why we have never seen Cyril Ramaphosa stand in rain? Because actually, his black skin is fake. It would wash off. Behind that black skin is actually a white president. White people came back, y'all, as a quote-unquote blackface president in this country. Guys, I'm making light of this, and I'm making fun of it because, again, the whole situation just really, it exposes a few hypocrisies that I think we often endure as South Africans in this country. And that is two things broadly that I want to rehash here that we spoke about on the BDL show on Wednesday. Number one, the real inequality in this country, the real difference in this country, and the real differences, in this country are not between black or white, or even necessarily rich people and poor people. The real difference in this country is between the political elites and their chommies, their rent-seeking buddies, and the rest of us. Why do I say this? Well, let me be precise and specific. The very fact that the president of this country can feel as though, actually, you know what? I'm not like any other citizen. I don't have to, endure the schlep of walking into a police station to report a crime. I can just get my head of security, who of course happens to be a police officer himself, to do this in a rogue fashion, allegedly, of course, in a rogue fashion, tells you everything you need to know about the real inequality in South Africa. The real inequality in this country is that often state services that are meant to serve everybody, and of course, state security, that is policing, is a function of the state. It's one function which, if anything, I do want to see the state pull off quite successfully, because it speaks to the preservation of life, liberty, and property rights. But that one function, even in this instance, is corrupted allegedly in the name of preserving the rights and the privileges of the elites, of political elites, over and at the expense, really, of the rest. And that's why you hear stories like these. That's the first bit of hypocrisy here. The other bit of hypocrisy, of course, is where I began this. And I really enjoyed Nolu's take on this in particular, about these sycophants, these cheerleaders for Ramaphosa, who sold us the lie that this guy is the squeaky clean dude who will change everything. Those people now are effectively turning their backs on Ramaphosa because they're realizing what people like us have been saying from the very beginning, that there are no clean individuals in the ANC, both by way of them being a criminal elite who are in power, and of course, in the other instance, being an elite who push and put in place bad ideas. Those are the two levels that make the current crop of politicians in this country, beyond the ANC, by the way, because you'll find them in the EFF, you'll find them in DA, you'll find them in other political parties. These avowed leftists who believe the state should control everything and push bad ideas in that regard. I had to get the little rant out of the way because, Jonathan, that's actually the crux of the matter. It's people here who believe rules for thee and not for me.
Yeah, I could hear when these people did their about turn, their 180-degree about turn, so quickly and suddenly, I could swear I heard necks snapping all the way from here in Cape Town. They did it so hard and quickly. But they did it, and as you mentioned, the sycophants, even when he still came into the ANC, but the presidency, and this Ramaphoria was starting, as Leon Lowe coined the term at the time, I couldn't help but think, guys, calm down. He's been president for like 5 minutes. Like, let's talk about this again in a month or 2 or 3, preferably a year, but like, let's not just do it so quickly. Personally, I was of the opinion, okay, I'll give him a year before I judge him or pass comment. In less than a month, he signed the National Minimum Wage Bill into law, and I thought, okay, his month's up, time done. This guy's gonna suck. I'm calling it. And well, now we're sitting in 2022, 3-4 years later, and it's only gotten worse. Everything.
And Jonathan, people often forget that the policy, for example, remember I said there's two levels in which people should always look at this current crop of politicians, especially in the ANC. The one, of course, is the fact that they're actual criminals. They are actual criminals. They will steal the very last cent that is in your pocket, literally through tax. But in the other sense, and of course corruption, but in the other sense, their ideas are criminal. I mean, any person today who literally can stand on the stage and say, I am a proud Marxist, I am a proud communist. When you look at the record of history, when it comes to communism, when you look at the record of history, when it comes to the implementation of Marxist ideas, anybody who says they are a proud Marxist should be heard in the same way as some idiot who would say, I'm a proud Nazi. It is literally the same crap in this country. And yet here we have an ANC government that literally has Marxists and communists, i.e. the Communist Party, as its left wing, and of course a labor movement by way of COSATU, also avowed lefties, also avowed Marxists on the other side of the equation here. But Jonathan, I want to come to you on this particular issue that I wanted to chew on. We have this awkward situation where people suddenly forget. Actually, Nolu, let me come to you. Sorry, Nolu, let me come to you. People forget, as they try and dribble us into thinking, Cyril is this awesome guy, and now they're shocked. We're so shocked that, allegations like this can happen. They forget this is the same guy who was the deputy president to a one Jacob Zuma for 8 years in the previous administration. Why are we being dribbled like this?
Well, just to start off, just to answer you why he did not actually go to the police and say whatever, because he said in this other article, remember, he didn't want to make the country, you don't want us to get us shocked as a country. So he was thinking about our emotions. So please understand the president. That's one part of it. And also number two, I don't know if you've got an amnesia in this country or someone is busy playing us, because we've seen the acts of ANC all throughout. Cyril Ramaphosa has never said no to some of the things that Jacob Zuma has done. Okay, at that time we might say probably he didn't have much power per se, but right now he has been in power and nothing has changed. Instead, the country is just going down the dogs, if I could put it like that, because of his leadership. And still, our media has the audacity to still protect this guy, because there have been rumors that no, this is how in the industry of farming, whatever that they farm, I forgot what is it. This is how they do it. It's the norm to find hardcore cash, like that's amount of cash. That's how it's done. And you can see that we are being really distracted to shield Ramaphosa and for us to see him as our savior, which since day one until now, he has done nothing at all to actually save us as a country.
Nolu, it must be nice. It must be nice to be the kind of person who can have millions in rands or dollars or whatever the case may be, just stashed, as is alleged, in furniture, under a bed, under sofas in this country. It must be really nice to be a part of the political elite in this country. And this is where I really get very angry, because I think about what it was like for me today, going into a Pick and Pay, pardon me, correction, I actually went into Checkers. Going into a Checkers, and in Zulu we say bambayega. You take it. Now you look at the price, you're going, hey, 100 rand for X amount of chicken, or 40 rand of what used to be 20 something rand of XY product, or whatever the case may be. That seems to be our reality, Nolu. Our reality is one where even basics to live, to get by, are becoming a no-no for us. But for political elites, no, they're talking about millions stuffed in sofas. Must be nice.
Funny enough, Sisha, I saw today, I just forgot where, actually they were doing a comparison of inflation. In 1980, 100 rand, they say that it is equivalent to 3.2 today. And they were showing the items that you could afford with 100 rand. And those items, they are, for instance, 2 liter back then, it was like 120. Right now, it's 28 rand. Where am I going is that I just feel that our government has not done anything to better our lives. And how is that? To make sure that whatever amount of money that you have, you can have a decent living. But instead, there's a guy who has a $4 million stashed somewhere, which is fair. I would never be jealous of Cyril's money. I know he's a billionaire. Maybe he's that guy who has a safe somewhere who stashed his money there. God knows what reason. But Cyril, can you at least make this country conducive for the ordinary people like us? That's something which you've never seen. Just ordinary people, dude, we okay. Get all the money. Yay, get it. But can we at least afford with 1,000 rand? Dude, can I get a decent grocery? 1,000 rand, Can I pay like less than 10 rand for a liter of petrol or of paraffin because it's winter for crying out loud right now?
All that I know is that I'm going to move all of my guns into my bed and under the bed, because clearly that's a better place to put it.
I'll tell you what.
We are led. We are led.
The moment you put them guns under your bed, trust me, the tooth fairy, the Mzansi tooth fairy will come and give you an AK-47 free. And it will come straight from Mozambique, homie. Shout out to all my Mozambique folk. That's not a knock at y'all. But no, guys, I'm going to move us on. And as I do that, a reminder to you, if you're watching the show, welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. My name is Usihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty, in conversation, of course, with Nolu Maki out in the battle, Paul. Brand marketing specialist, main man. Make sure you get in touch with her if you want your business branded right and all that marketing good stuff. Her details will, of course, be revealed as to how you can get hold of her at the end of the show. Jonathan Wright, of course, who is my go-to legal mind when it comes to all things self-defense and gun rights. Him and Gideon are good friends of mine in that regard. He's also joining us tonight. We will be joined in a moment. I just got a message from him in another 10 minutes. He's running late. By Koketso Resane of the Manpatria show. Remember, Manpatria comes to you every Monday at 7 p.m. Good evening. Welcome to it. Hit that like button and join in the conversation. I'm going to start getting the comments, guys, to filter through here because this is the one show where it's very interactive. We allow the viewers, of course, to be a part of the conversation. The first comment I saw that I'm sort of looking at now is this one. Again, that notion of bambayega, cooking oil has become a symbol of it, if anything. Walking around with a 5 liter, 5 liter, with a 2 liter even cooking oil in this country. Hey, man, you're the new Motsepe, Nolu.
I'm not even laughing, Sisha. The sad thing is that whenever such things do happen, you know very well that strikes are going to go there. Crime is going to go high because firstly, people are idling their jobs. And second of all, people are hungry as well. And like you said, really, this ridiculous price of oil is also getting actually crazy. So the state of our country, I just think that it's making it so difficult for the ordinary to really survive. I said that before. But also, imagine, Sihle, as young people, you've just gotten out of varsity, you're starting to work, you really just getting that basic salary and you're excited and now you need to feed yourself. dude, you bumped in with the fact that you need to buy an oil of 120. You get what I mean? I know this for me, these we don't really bring solutions to people. We are just venting. But at the same time, I think we need to have shows where we have solutions and how to help one another to maybe make more money. I do not know, but it's high time we remove our eyes from these politicians because they do not really care about us.
Absolutely spot on. And maybe, Jonathan, as we conclude this segment, and I do see you want to chip in here, that last comment that Nolu makes is actually spot on. The need for the average citizen in this country to disavow themselves from this belief that there is a savior coming. We seem to do this merry-go-round, Jonathan, every let's call it election cycle or in the run-up, halfway through an election year term to halfway through a term of government towards an election cycle, we're often told, oh, well, that leader is bad. Trust me, the next leader, they'll tell us, will be the great guy. He'll save us. That Messiah is simply not coming, Jonathan.
No, he or she is not coming. They will never come because at the end of the day, you shouldn't really be outsourcing your solutions to your problems to someone else. The little thing I wanted to chip in on, like talking about just cooking oil, I went to fill up with petrol yesterday because I went shooting on a friend's farm near Malmesbury. 400 Rand to drive, nearly 400 Rand to drive from Somerset West to Philadelphia, which is just outside Malmesbury.
That's right.
And when I just threw in 200 Rand on the way back, and I was like, okay, while that happens, I'm just going to check the messages on my phone. And so I read a message. I hadn't even finished reading it, and I heard the pump stop, and the petrol attendant takes the hose out and puts it back. I stick my head out the window and call him, like, is that it? Is that everything? I haven't even been here for a few seconds. And it's like, no, put in more. I'll give you more money. Just please put more, and I need to get home. On the solutions thing, just empowering people is how you solve these things, because the person who is best placed to solve their problem is the person who has the problem. You don't need someone who lives several hundred kilometers away to say, yes, I understand exactly what your problem is. I know how to fix it. I know what you're going through. I know how you feel. I know what your skills are. I know how you're affected by things. So let's do this thing. And just on the issue of solving problems yourself, when I was at my friend's farm, we did a drive around, and there were lots and lots of pigeons and Egyptian geese, and they were eating the seed because it's just been planting season for wheat, and they're pests. Now, if the average person could afford and just go through the process to get a firearm or a shotgun, those pests would be gone and those people would be eating food. Very simple, off the top of my head, because this is a problem. Farmers do have these problems. They put seed down to grow wheat so they can sell the wheat. They don't throw out like we do in the suburbs to feed the birds.
And, with that being said, just a quick bookmark at this point. I see Brett Sesams. Shout out to you, homie, for the near on $10. Wow. Very much. Thank you. $10 super chat. Comment being who David Makura was, right, to call the ANC conferences war zones. Now split from the conferences to Ramaphosa's farm and Fraser's office. I had a bad feeling about that or it when Cyril had taken office. Sorry, I kind of had to fix the grammar there. Guys, take your time when you type. Take your time when you type these. By the way, thank you, Brett, for your message. But take your time when you type them. I will read them out properly on screen as I just go to a few more comments. I see Chris White is in the comment section. Shout out to you, Chris. In fact, hey man, if you have time, you want to hop on, let me know, and I'll definitely bring you on to the stream. And where was I? Pardon me. There's actually a very interesting comment. Oh, there we go. This is a bane, I think, on everyone's existence. Kermit basically saying, hey man, I have to fill up 2 to 3 times. He has to fill up, 2 to 3 times a week. And this is where it gets not so funny. And I expressed this on Wednesday's show. It becomes incredibly painful when you watch that price ticker at the petrol pump just continue to roll at the fast level, and you're like, whoa, how are we at 1,000? In my case, how are we at 1,300 and the car is not full yet? How are we going towards 1,700 Rand to fill this tank? Who has this kind of money?
That's
Really,
where you get
guys,
out the back. That's where you get out the black Koki pen and you, sorry, CK, that's where you get the
No, go
black
ahead.
Koki pen and you start drawing lines on your body to say, cut here.
It gets to a point where it's almost tears inducing, because you then think to yourself, how are other South Africans surviving? How are those who have less than me surviving? How is someone who is a pensioner, for example, on a fixed income, how are they surviving? And it
But
really gets me, because we're seeing politicians not give a damn about South Africans. The very people who I share this beautiful country with, they don't give a damn about us. They don't give a damn about us. And it freaks me out, because it makes me think two things. Number one, what will the reaction be of those who have less than us? Because you can only take this kind of thing here and so far. And we saw a taste of that last year in July, especially in Durban and Gauteng areas, where the poorest of the poor literally said to hell with law and order when we are this hungry. At that time, of course, what exacerbated and led to that wasn't Jacob Zuma and his incarceration. You were dribbled on that. What led to that was hard lockdowns that were imposing hardship on those who are hard pressed already in this country. That is the reality of the country you live in, dear South African. So that when you see politicians create the same conditions because of A, their criminality, as I said, and B, their criminal ideas, that is, their bad ideas, leftism, socialism, communism, statism, it begs the question, how will the poorest of the poor respond? And where will you be when that chaos ensues? Guys, want to chip in? Final comment before we move on?
yeah, I think, Sihle, I want to talk about getting the basics right for ourselves now, even before the government. And I'll base it, of course, it's Youth Month to young people. I think it's important as well that we may truly not complicate our lives any further. What do I mean about that? It's high time that we drop on things that we do not need as well. For instance, you find that you don't need to get pregnant right now if you're not married as a woman. You don't need to buy a car if you have really a decent transport where you stay. I'm just telling like it is right now. You also do not need to go partying. No, you need to feed yourself right now, because if you want to have all of what I've just mentioned right now, I think that is also where we are adding more burdens over our shoulders as South African as well, especially the young people of this country. Also, I also want to advocate of one thing. It's important for you to stay in a place where transport, basic transport, or rather, let me say, just a public transport where it's a decent thing that you can get. That is why I get furious when I see that trains aren't working, because a train is an affordable transport for you to go to work and for you to be able to commute to go and buy groceries. And you get what I'm saying? Those things are important. That is why I'm saying that, let's also not add further, because we are living in a time where the government is not for us. They're definitely against us. And I want us also, as Black people of this country, to let go of this lie that the government is meant to save us. They are not. We need to be people who are self-sustaining. And whenever they actually sell this lie to us, because we are the ones who are being exploited. It's us. And we believe it, and then they remain in power even longer because we give them that power.
Absolutely. Nolu, just keep an eye on your mic. There's a bit of a rattling or a scratch noise. But absolutely, we totally got that sentiment. And in fact, with that being said, Koketso Resane is in my little screen here in the waiting area. Let me bring him on. Koketso, good evening, Bob.
Yeah, evening. Sorry, I'm late.
No stress, homie. We were really beginning to unpack this painful situation that the ordinary South African finds themselves, and then insofar as irreality too as South Africans, and then you look at the reality enjoyed, I should say, actually, by the political elites in this country, where they're stashing millions under their beds, and that's what's going missing, and allegedly they're paying off the people who then steal that money, also hundreds of thousands of rand as hush money. The image of this president, Koketso, burst by those who were carrying water for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that much of, I'm sure you've touched on much of this already, but one has to ask themselves, what exactly is an individual doing with that much money in cash in the first place? This is almost cartel level, scripted, in that Firstly, how's the money procured in the first place? And then again, what is the money for?
When I was talking, I had this mental image of Ramaphosa like coming on the stream saying, "Plata or plomo."
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, homie. My bad.
Yeah, what legitimate purpose is there for hoarding that much money in cold hard cash in the first place? To me, that tells me that there's definitely there's either criminal intent or there was a criminal acquisition of that much money in the first place. That's not to say anything about how, again, if me and you were to have that much money and be caught, definitely there'd be headline news about and a long line of journalists looking to expose our nefarious activities. The president is seemingly getting a free pass on this. Instead, he's been given all the time in the world to kind of clear his name here. And I wish others, I wish there would be more people questioning the legitimacy of such proceeds in the first place. Never mind any other legal implications, such as declaring to SARS or to the Reserve Bank and that kind of thing.
Must be nice to be these individuals, really. Pardon me. But guys, I must move us on. And welcome to it, Ngapela Koketso. It's good to have you on. The other issue I really want us to chew on this week, it dominated the headlines, if anything. And as I said earlier on, it's linked to the president still. It's amazing how, as the bad news piles on, and really the golden boy image of the president as it's shattered and it's burst, and you have the likes of Melanie Vervoort and what's his name, Eusebius Makeza, expressing this I like to call it fake surprise and outrage. Maybe in Melanie's case she really was a devout acolyte of the president, but here they are now writing these pieces. Melanie Vervoort saying et tu Ramaphosa, a play on, of course, those famous words by by Caesar to Brutus, basically saying, and you too, you're also part of the corrupt, the dirty, allegedly, in this country. But here's where it gets interesting. As the image of their golden boy gets dented, Koketso, you then have a flood of good PR, really, coming out of the states and various organs of the states, including the presidency, on various things that prior to the bad news around their golden boy, they've been dragging their feet on. For example, we heard the Guptas suddenly were arrested and now face extradition from Dubai. We heard, in addition, for example, that advocate Ubusisiwe Mkhwebane, a dubious character that she is now finally suspended by the presidency. And again, a raft of other things that they've been dragging their feet on. Suddenly, there's great movement on as the president rather, is facing a lot of pressure. In fact, recently here on IOL, let me try and see if I can put it up on screen. Just bear with me, guys, because it speaks to this point that I'm making, how suddenly good news, in inverted commas, is coming out thick and fast. The presidency now also saying, hey, you know what? We've also cut the perks from ministers in this country. Let me just bring it on. Please, guys, give me a second. As I now say that, there it is. Should be on screen now. There you go. The perks being cut from the pockets of MECs, of ministers in this country, is cutting the perks. And the article basically saying President Cyril Ramaphosa has cut some of the perks of members of his executive, including, brace yourselves, guys, here it is, stopping the practice of the government paying for security at ministers' and deputies' private residences. And this, of course, and various other perks supposedly being cut. Of course, you have a situation here, Koketso, where this is a president who's on a PR exercise trying to redeem his golden boy image.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a laundry list of wishes that have remained largely ignored by government, not just in this administration, but also, of course, in the previous administration. There's a long list of things that have been ignored, and as a way of saving face, it definitely does seem like the president is suddenly pressing the play button on much of what the public has been asking for. Top of my list personally is still a grand reduction in the size of the cabinet, but of course, bemoaning the cost, the taxpayer cost of having deputy ministers in the first place, and some of them having an endless list of staff. So, yeah, the president doing all of this, really, I would say it is sort of saving face. It's probably been always kept as an ace inside of the deck of cards, of course. And going back to the point you made about, the media then controlling the narrative of what actually remains at the top of people's minds in terms of the political discussion, it definitely does seem like there is a push to almost say forget about the $4 million or however amount has been spoken about by Arthur Fraser, of course, and rather let's talk about all the good that the president is doing. That is, again, seemingly putting the wheels in motion in terms of getting the inept public protector out of the door. Doing things like cutting the tax burden by limiting, the perks of ministers, etc. This is all stuff that is all good and everything, but the way it's being portrayed by the media is almost done intentionally to say, right, stop talking about the money that was found and let's talk about the good news, for example. This at a time when the media isn't exactly known for sharing good news. They're very quick to hop on and spread any form of negativity. And this time around, they kind of, switching it up, hoping that we forget about this 4 million. But like I said, if it is a crime, if a crime has been committed, and I mentioned this on Manpatria earlier in the week, of course, and that if a crime has been committed, isn't there a case to be made then that the president has actually gone against the oath that he swore when he became the president by actually committing a crime and doing something as basic as reporting a crime? Things like this, when they happen to the average citizen, you are often accused of being an accomplice to a crime when you do things like this. And when the president does it again, we are supposed to quickly move on and we are given different sorts of news to focus on. It's not an ideal world. And like I mentioned, I don't know if you guys have mentioned this already, but again, the president having moved the state intelligence apparatus inside of the presidency does actually raise questions in terms of how will anyone actually hold him to account if he's always 10 steps ahead because the people that should be finding this information and reporting it effectively report to one of his underlings. There's a serious question to be raised in that, is it at all possible for the president to actually be accountable, not just for this crime, but for any others? And again, this is not to say Cyril specifically, but if the intelligence apparatus is not somehow segregated from the presidency's office, how can we trust that that crime at a presidential level will actually be prevented, let alone punished? We absolutely can't. And this was something that was raised at the time, of course. And now we find ourselves in a situation where the worst has come to pass. And you've got a president who, in the real world, should really be, have a seraph coming up to his presidential mansion and summoning him to court for an appearance, hopefully. But let's see how it plays out.
Absolutely. That last point, Koketso, absolutely critical, because at the time of him doing this, I remember on this show warning people that anytime you start seeing a president amass that kind of power, state security apparatus in a centralized manner, it is the stuff of despots around the world. It is the stuff of despotic leaders, for example, that we've seen here on the African continent post-independence. As the economy tanks in a lot of, and again, the record of history is absolutely crystal clear in this regard. I can rattle off example after example. The moment an economy begins to collapse, or as you've seen in Africa, because of the bad ideas. As I said, those ideas are leftist in nature. They're statist, they're socialist, they're communist. As the ideas begin to cripple the economy and things tank in that part of the world, you see the politicians begin to amass state security power and amass the apparatus in a centralized fashion in order to initially go after their opponents and then, of course, by extension, go after the public from complaining on this. Speaking about someone who is someone who understands state apparatus by way of state security, here he is, Colonel Chris Wright, retired, of course, host of the Chris Wright Africa Show. Chris, good evening.
Chile, how's it?
Very, very good to have you on, my brother, as we chew on this issue and potentially move on in a moment here. But I do want you to opine on this for a moment because, again, there's two things here, Chris, that I want you to bring in because you will give us that nice US perspective, which is no different perhaps to ours, insofar as the cost of living for the ordinary American in your case versus what the political elites are focusing on in all parts of the world by way of a January 6th, for example, hearings on the Dog and Pony show, that is dribbling and distracting ordinary people as those people suffer.
No, absolutely. First off, hello to the rest of the panel. I don't know Jonathan or Nolu, but of course, Koketso and I are well acquainted. We have our show, Kinako, the Call of Africa, which we do frequently. It's time to do that again, by the way, Koketso. And I think maybe Nzuzu never shows up for our program. Maybe we should get Nolu to come on in his place since he's a no-show. But first off, I did want to point out this. This is very important to understand. I understand where Cyril is coming from. It all makes sense to me. I mean, hang on a second. Let me dig this out of my chair here. Oh, look at that cash. Oh, look at that. $4 I had hidden in my chair. I wrap my money in bags and hide it in the furniture. It helps my back. It lifts the seat up so that the spine doesn't get a lot of pressure. So I get stashed in the money. Okay, so Tile, U.S. and what's going on here. Man, I'll tell you what. Donald Trump left office, whether you like Trump or not, and I'm not saying you should like him, but I will say this. Gasoline, which is not something that presidents can really do to lower the price. It's market-based. It's a fungible commodity. But gasoline costs $1.89 a gallon premium here in Pennsylvania, which have the second highest state value, not value added, but sales tax. We put state sales tax on top of that. We had the highest at the time. Now we're behind California. And so $1.89 a gallon. It's now over $5.01. I was about to go out and do a short. That's why I left the stream to go record a video about the price. The price of commodities reported by the federal government is just total lies, total BS. Everything that I buy is 100 or 200 or 300% higher than it was a year ago. And I warned people this already in March of last year. I saw the inflation coming. And it's a combination of transportation woes, of poor macroeconomic policy, of uncertainty in energy markets. And that's driving a lot of this. But, I was accused by the leftist hate wankers who come onto my short and comment when I don't even talk about things that they comment about. And they're like, I need an economics lesson. Well, the price of petrol and gasoline is very complicated. But one thing that's not very complicated is the consumption of petrol around the world. This chart, which you probably can't see very well on the screen, tells the story from the Energy Information Administration, which is the U.S. government agency that tracks these things for the whole world. And at the lowest point in the pandemic, when we dropped consumption of global oil, it dropped by a total of 9 million barrels, which is about 10% of daily consumption, maybe 12%. In last year, it recovered 5.5 million, so about half that came back. And we saw prices rise significantly. And now we've had about 2.3 million consumption. So we're back up to where we were about 2019, about 100 million barrels of oil consumed per day around the world. And governments are lying to us, telling us that the reason why things are the way they are is because of consumption and because of demand. But that's simply a lie. The prices have tripled. It's 300% higher for gasoline in Pennsylvania than it was in January of 2021. Yet the price of petrol, but the demand for petrol is only up by 10%. There's a lot more to the price of petrol than demand. Don't get me wrong. But you can't make the argument that it's a surging demand because there's no surging demand. There's a global surplus of nearly 3 million barrels of oil being produced every single day right now. In fact, oil during the pandemic was so low that you would be offered $55 to buy oil futures just to store it, if you remember that. And people thought that was crazy. Anyway, prices are off the charts here, brother. I mean, I retired from active service in October 2019 and got no cost of living increase in the next year. This year, I got a 5.5% cost of living increase. The total dollar amount for that as a retired colonel that I'll receive this year, I already figured out what it's going to be for the year, was already consumed an additional cost of my groceries and my gasoline by February this year. All gone. So telling me that it's 9% inflation, I'm not stupid. You can't insult me like that. Everything I buy costs a great deal more. A flight I just took to Texas cost me almost $700. A year ago, that was $250. $250 a year ago. So they're just full of it. Anyway.
I want to keep to you for a moment, Chris.
Sure.
Because again, I really want to tease this out. We are being dribbled and distracted. I mean, here you have a situation where, I nearly swore. The governor of California meets up with the president of Canada in that part of the world, and they host this wonderful, flowery set of press conferences talking about, climate change is our biggest problem, and we need to combine our efforts as these two, in this case, a region and of course a country, in fighting gun crime. They told us, gun crime is such a big issue. There's mass shootings all over the place that we need to deal with. We need to legislate them out of course, the conversation. And I see Jonathan smiling because this is his forte, and we're going to get into this for a moment. But the other interesting thing, these two chaps come in, they say, you know what, maybe we need to, and of course Biden echoes the same sentiment, just shut your mouth, dear Americans who are complaining about the price of food and the shortages, whether of
baby formula. Yeah.
And of course the gas prices in your part of the world, because Putin is doing this. It's all Putin's fault. If it wasn't for Putin, goodness me, everything would be okay. Chris, I wanted to concisely disavow this notion,
sure,
and tell me why it's actually wrong.
All right. So, I have a habit. I can steal all the oxygen in the room. Koketso knows that. So I'll try to limit my time, self-limit. I'll put my governor on here. Okay. So here's the bottom line. 75% of the increase in prices in the United States and in petrol are pre-Ukraine invasion, pre-Joe Biden stoking this conflict, which was preventable a year ago. $40 billion for Ukraine have been given in March of last year when Putin moved 70,000 troops to the Ukrainian border, would have prevented this conflict. Arguably, you can make that argument. When it comes to this, you're right. Distraction. Hey, it's Pride Month, man. Ooh, and it's not enough. So guess what? Virgin Australia started Pride Month in March. It runs for 4 months. And Lufthansa has the Love Boat. They have a new plane called the Love Hansa, and they're going to celebrate Pride until November. So, we're gonna celebrate Pride for 9 months of the year instead of just 1 month a year. It's all distractions. Ukraine, this, that, other things. It's Donald Trump's fault. Hell, it's George Walker Bush's fault. Barack Obama is still blaming him for his failures. Remember Build Back Better? Oh, it's going to be better. Who's got a better life in America today than January last year? Nobody. Not anybody except the cadres. You guys call them cadres. We call them cadres. The cadres for the Democrat Party and the Uniparty and the Republicans, they have life better. This is all distraction. And when it comes to firearms, 13,000 Americans were murdered in 2019. In 2020, the summer of love, when armed gangs attacked the streets of Louisville, black gangs clad in armor and not reported by the press. Now they got 31 so-called white nationalists arrested for misdemeanor in Idaho. Don't get me wrong, they're dangerous people. They should be dealt with, but so should everything else. But 13,000 people killed in 2019, 16,000 murdered in 2020 during the summer of love in that year. And guess what? 1 million babies were aborted last year. Nobody's talking about that. 300,000 of them were black. Talk about Black Lives Matter. Spare me. Whatever your thoughts on abortion, what about 1 million dead American citizens? No one's talking about that. These are all distractions. And meanwhile, there's no equal justice under the law. We have people violating a federal law, demonstrating outside Supreme Court justices' homes. That is a felony, not a misdemeanor. Where is CNN breathlessly reporting on that? They're not. They're encouraging. And now we have someone trying to murder a Supreme Court justice, and they dismiss it. It's not even covered by the press. We had a Bernie Sanders supporter who went and shot Republican congressmen at a softball event, a bipartisan softball event, and it was barely a news event. The DC sniper, he's a white man. No, he was a black man with all kinds of mental problems, and he had a little friend to help him and killed all these people. The equal justice under the law for all Americans, regardless of their ethnicity, their race, does not apply, especially in this corrupt regime. Everything for them is about, we have a lesbian Haitian American. She's our press secretary, and she can't string two sentences together. She's about as bright as a 2-watt light bulb, and not an LED 2-watt light bulb, but the traditional incandescent, the kind you can't see squat, the kind of school children in Easter Cape have to pray they get enough electricity while they die in pit latrines choking on feces, courtesy of the ANC. Meanwhile, 15 children die of starvation in Port Elizabeth because the incompetent ANC morons returned 62 million rand to the central government while children starve to death. In Northwest Province, 17 billion of a 57 billion budget returned to the national legislature because this incompetent ANC kleptocracy freaking racketeering organization is stealing from everybody. I saw Nolu was enjoying it, so I went on the rant.
But again, Chris, you're absolutely spot on. And Nolu, I'm going to come to you in a moment, Nolu, because really,
man.
I'm in a
That
weird.
was a mild one.
I'm in a weird place here where, guys, it really is becoming. It really is becoming the thing of an almost Orwellian nightmare to an extent, where we're being told as citizenry that no, disregard what you see, disregard what you hear, disregard the evidence right in front of you, and rather believe in narratives that we're spinning. That very same press secretary that Chris refers to, the Biden spokesperson, effectively openly saying a blatant lie. Well, the economy has never been in a better place than it's been ever before. And in fact, quote, she says, this is what it will allow us, the breathing room, effectively, she suggests, to then tackle the issue of, for example, inflation and the gas prices and the like.
Race
Nolu, we have
equality, that's the big issue.
and we have the same problem here in this country, Nolu, where our politicians do the exact same thing. Insofar as anytime a serious matter that actually affects the ordinary livelihoods of ordinary South Africans, what do you then see play out in our media? Oh, racism. A racism scandal has come out. Some person called another a whatever, and now front to back news coverage on that issue, neglecting the fact that there are ordinary issues that are affecting South Africans.
But then, if you think about it, Sihle, if you have a full fridge full of food, do you think you'd really be bothered about somebody next to you, whether or not that person is starving? These guys are wealthy beyond our imagination, not because of hard work, but because of the money, the blood and sweat of ordinary people of this country. So that's number one. I remember just 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks ago. Remember when that guy who pissed on this other guy's stuff? Remember when that one was trending? And we had to eat that every day. And I remember particularly Eusebius, even Sizwe, did a special a show on his podcast, whatever you call the thing, where he was talking about it. But then suddenly do I hear the very same people holding our government accountable and saying that you need to do better. People are starving, for him to really talk about that. But we love this I'll call them luxury topics. Racism is luxury for South Africans, period. Because a lot of people are starving.
And
racism is luxury.
I was about to say, also reflected in the data. Racism is not even top 10 issues, as South Africans often opine in various surveys, whether it's from the IOR or StatSA and the like.
And if you actually think about it, I don't know if you've seen it, you found young people in Stellenbosch, a large number, some of them, they were fighting about racism. I looked at those young people and I said to myself, no wonder you guys are not employable. Because what business do you have talking about racism? Freaking kidding me. You guys are sitting together. Most of you black kids that are there, you are beyond privileged. You are beyond because you have a bursary. Some of them have cars, see, as black as they are. They are not starving. They are not even discriminated against. Just that we love this whole thing of popularism that is just over something that does not exist. Not that does not exist, but that is not a focal point, a priority for young black South Africans. It is not.
No, the exact point being made here is this notion they often try and sell us, that being black equates to being a victim in the oppression Olympics in this country, or that being black invariably means you're predisposed somehow to being poor. And it's often the richest and the most privileged and the most politically connected, ironically, of black folk who often push these notions. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you in a moment because I want to, especially when we then segue to the crime stats segment, because I think that'll be our next thing that we chew on here. This is where I really want us to look at the issue of gun ownership as a means, perhaps, to responding to some of the egregious crime levels we see. But I want Koketso just to weigh in as a final thought on this particular issue. Koketso, again, I think that the broad theme here is really the notion of appearances versus reality, insofar as the appearance of things as politicians want to put forward to us versus the reality as is felt on an everyday level by the average South African, the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African who are always talk about, who are always seek to stand for and defend in this country. It is that South African who's literally feeling the very rand in their pockets not even go as far as it did the previous month. In fact, I was speaking to pensioners yesterday at Shul, at synagogue, and they were saying, "Hey, man, we're seeing prices rise every 3 weeks or so, roughly, and as a person who's on a fixed income, I simply cannot keep up."
Yeah, and it goes back to basic economics. This very basic analogy of why food prices go up, for instance. Very easy to imagine how, of course, the transport of food to the supermarket has gone up, but very few people actually speak about the input costs going up. That is the price of actually doing the activities around farming that food in the first place. The tractor needs petrol. So if petrol goes up, the tractor is a little bit more expensive to run so that the farmer can plow. For instance, things like that is things very few people are willing to talk about, let alone fully understand. And it is that ignorance that the government basically depends on when they then go ahead and tell us that the reason particularly Black South Africans remain poor is because they don't have the economy in their hands, because they require government's help to be active participants in the economy. There's a reliance on people being ignorant for things like this to actually perpetuate successfully. Say what you will about the EFF, you can support them all you like, but I'm yet to see any tangible, fruitful result of marching, for instance. And that's now ignoring the fact that to be able to quickly call upon masses to march to anywhere, be it for jobs or against racism or whatever they decide, really, to be able to call upon the masses, there has to be a mass of unemployed people who are willing to actually participate in such. The working man clearly has a job to go to, has to keep themselves busy, has to put food on the table, and does not have time to entertain the political ambitions of people whose grand achievement is actually putting together a large crowd larger than anyone else. So it's this ignorance that is actually dragging a lot of people back, and we need to speak about it, not just on this platform, but there needs to really be a conversation about how Black South Africans in particular really need just that extra layer of education to understand the economics behind why government policies actually affect them in their pocket and make life a little bit more expensive, not just for pensioners, but right through to even someone who's fresh out of school and is looking to do something as basic as looking for a job. That taxi fare, when taxi fares go up, it makes it more expensive to even look for a job, and that's why unemployment remains so high. So I do feel for those who are pensioning, etc., but I especially feel for those who are coming after the fact. That is the next generation who has to somehow make things work in an economy they didn't actually contribute in terms of making it worse than it currently is. And as a closing point, we need to hold the politicians accountable right now, because they make decisions in the full knowledge that 20 years from now, when I'll still be here having to pick up the slack, they probably won't be around or will be too old to actually go back and reflect on all the things that they have done. So we need to hold them to account now while they're still in political office.
Absolutely. And with that being said, a reminder to you that you're watching Liberty and Friends. Welcome to it. My name is Usihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty, in conversation tonight with Jonathan Wright. He's, of course, an attorney. Jonathan, are you an attorney yet or not quite yet? But a legal eagle, let me call him that, and soon to be attorney. And he is my go-to guy on all things gun and crime stats, usually on that particular issue. And Nolu Maki, of course, brand strategist and marketing guru out in Gabriel in the Western Cape. Shout out to her, man, for being on the show. Koketso Resane, 1/3 of the Manpatria fellas. Remember, Manpatria comes to you every Monday at 7 p.m. Hope to see an awesome episode tomorrow. And of course, just joining us now is Colonel retired Chris White of the Chris White Africa Show. Good evening. Welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. Hit that like button. Help spread the show and the algorithm around it. Fellas, I'm going to move us on to another topic because, again, it speaks to the broader sense of that notion of appearances versus reality. The reality being, in this country, the recent crime stats were released. That's of the fourth quarter. That's the period, of course, of January to March this year. That's the first 3 months of this year, basically. And I can only describe them this way. The first 3 months of this year in our South Africa, this republic, were the most violent, brutal, and unsafe for South Africans, period. Let me be precise and specific. In that same period of time, that is between January and March this year, compared to January and March last year, that's of 2021, 1,107 more South Africans were murdered, butchered on the streets of this country. It is absolutely shameful that we retain a system so perverse of law enforcement in this country that it's simply unable to respond to the blatant and wanton disregard for life, liberty, and property rights in this country. You and me are being butchered on the streets, being watched by politicians who stand safely ensconced behind a wall of security, the very security they deny us, both by way of visible policing on the streets and, of course, our own ability to defend ourselves by way of gun rights. And this is a conversation worth having in this country. And this is where I want to turn to Jonathan on this particular issue. Jonathan, the numbers simply are painting the picture that, number one, SAPS is simply failing in its mandate. In fact, it itself has actually said that in those very exact words. And number two, any attempt by Ubehitele, the asshat of a minister, to continue to want to disband, or rather disarm South Africans or make it difficult for us to exercise our self-defense, God-given right, by the way, is absolutely a crime against humanity. Jonathan, you're muted, just for FYI. Jonathan, you're muted. I don't know if you've muted the mic itself.
Oh, there we go. There's the problem. Yeah, I muted. You hear me now? Yeah, I muted it on my headset because there was a disturbance in the house. Just two things quickly before I answer that question, which I'm going to ask you to repeat when I get to it. Not an attorney yet, still actually studying my LLB. Shortly after Chris came on, the reason I smiled so hard there was because you talked a bit about guns and whatnot, and I wanted to actually reach over and get my Glock 19 and wave it on the screen, but I thought that would be a little bit inappropriate.
Shout out to you, homie, and congratulations, by the way, on your other license for your rifle.
Yeah, the
nice.
Rifle. That was a lot of fun.
Let's get into it.
So please ask me that question that you started with again.
No problem. Again, I prefaced the question by pointing out the absolutely horrific crime stats in this country. In fact, I pointed out that in the same period, that's between January and March this year compared to last year, same time, 1,100 more South Africans basically have been murdered, butchered on the streets of this country is effectively the point I made. And of course, the other categories of crime, particularly violent crime, also heading in a negative direction. And this is where it gets interesting for me, and this is why I wanted to pose the question to you. On the one hand, it is an indictment on the failure of policing in this country, specifically visible policing, competent policing, and effective policing. That's the one ambit of it. Of course, there's multiple variables as to why that is the case. But on the other, the disenfranchising of the individual in this country. And really, I talk a lot about the individual, but really we're a family society. So really the disenfranchising of the family in this country to defend itself by way of a God-given right to self-defense, but what the government in this country and the one asshat, as I said, Begicele, calls a privilege to own a gun. Those two things literally coming together, those three things, if you include the crime stats, coming together as the perfect storm.
It really is a terrible state of affairs. And I mean, I've got 4 years of crime stats actually open on my second monitor here, which I've been glancing at from time to time. And especially now with the recent crime stats, which, as you say, is for the fourth quarter. In that presentation, they have the fourth quarter stats for the previous 4 reporting years. And the jump from 4,600 murders in 2017, 2018 to 6,083 in 2021, 2022 is quite something. It's higher than the year-on-year increase, fluctuation, which was about 100 to 200 extra or less deaths. Now suddenly it's nearly 1,500 more. Obviously, the past 2020, 2021 wasn't really a accurate reflection of anything because of the lockdown and all of that. So naturally, crime went down over there. And now things are going, dare I call it, back to normal. People are getting more desperate. The fuel prices are going up. More people are going to get unemployed. We talked about fuel prices a little bit just now. And you alluded to, I think, a few times already so far on the show that the civil unrest that often follows these sorts of things. We must not forget that the Arab Spring was initiated by bread riots in Egypt. The price of bread basically rippled across the entire Arab world. And here we are, and we've got fuel prices, we've got unemployment, we've got safety and security issues as we do. And not only do we have safety and security issues, you are actively discouraged, if not almost outright disallowed as official policy, or unofficial policy, sorry, to actually protect yourself. It is extremely difficult to get a firearm. It's expensive to get a firearm. You have to go through the proficiency training, which then goes to competency. That's a 4-month process. Then you have to buy the gun. If you're going to buy it new, that's going to cost you. If you want a reliable thing like a Glock 19, that's going to be 10 grand. CZs are the same. You can get secondhand stuff for cheaper, often from defunct brands, which are not reliable. But it doesn't really matter. That's still going to cost a couple of thousand. And you're still going to wait 3-4 months to get the license for that, because we have a license the firearm, not a license the person approach. It's not like in many parts of the US where you can just walk into the gun shop, and yes, you do have to fill out some paperwork, I believe, for their national instant background check system. Nope, here it's death by paperwork. I shudder to think of the amount of ink I've gone through with pens, because none of it's digital. All of it is physical pen and paper. It's a horrible thought. It's a horrible experience. It takes 45 minutes from me walking into my DFO, or designated firearm officer's office, and sitting down to walking out again. It takes 45 minutes for them to check all of my paperwork and supporting documentation and take my payment and then say, okay, thank you. We'll probably see you in 4 months when you can come and collect the physical little plastic card that now says you may possess the firearm that you've applied for. And the average person, especially the average poor person, can't afford this. Even if they can acquire something like a Llama, which is a really, really bad gun, I do not recommend anyone to ever buy one of those if that's going to be your defense tool. Or a 38 Special snub nose. Good luck finding ammunition, so don't buy that either. You're not going to be allowed to officially possess it for months. And since the irony sort of thing, or the contradiction, is that if you apply for a self-defense license, you have to prove and motivate a need as to why you need to own this firearm. And it's like, well, surely one line of I live in South Africa should be good enough. Obviously, it's not. But you add in all of this, the stuff, the crime stats. Oh, I live here. I travel past this very bad crime area. And so there's a somewhat urgent need in this sort of thing. Like, I'm worried for my life enough to go and buy a firearm. And the police are like, okay, cool. We recognize that you need a firearm to protect yourself. It may even be urgent. You might live in Nyanga or something like that. And they're like, okay, cool. You've proven the need. All right, now please wait 4 months. Please just don't die in that time. And then you can come get your firearm. It's an insult.
No, and it's frightening, Jonathan, because really, I must make this point absolutely crystal clear. And this is why I said this topic would deviate a little bit, because I was using the crime stats as a hook, but really I want to focus on this notion of, if not the police are going to protect us and our families and communities, why are families and individuals being disallowed, or rather it's being made difficult for them to protect themselves? And this is a universal debate, even though it's raging right now, even in America. So I'll bring Chris in a moment on that particular issue. But here's where it gets interesting for me, fellas. And I'll come to you, Koketso, Nolu, and then Chris. You can pass all the gun laws you want. Ubhekicele can pass all the gun laws he wants from under that ass hat of his. But at the end of the day, the South African criminal has proven one thing, and really the criminal anywhere and everywhere in the world has proven one thing. They don't give a damn about legislation, period. They don't give a damn that there's something called a gun-free zone when you walk into a mall or if you walk into a shop or whatever the case may be. They don't
Oh,
give
that's
a
what those
flying-
signs mean.
Exactly. They don't give a flying fact. Let me go one step further. They don't even give a flying fudge that they're going to face armed and trained resistance by way of, let's say, for example, these cash and transit guys who are also relatively well trained and also quite well armed. They don't even care that those guys will shoot back. So why on earth would you disallow or make it difficult for the ordinary citizen to have a force multiplier to be able to be in the fight when some criminal, some filthy criminal comes pushing his way through my door or squeezing his way through my window, pointing a firearm at me? Okay, so it's simply, I must say this, to me, and it might sound like hyperbole, but it's simply a crime against our very humanity as South Africans for politicians to disarm us whilst they surround themselves by armed men 24/7.
Yeah, it is criminal. It's also it's also a common belief amongst morons who somehow become bureaucrats that they can legislate good into society. They can't. So much in the same way that you can't legislate the poor into prosperity, you also can't legislate law-abidingness into criminals. For the simple reason that criminals are, by virtue of them being criminals, they do not abide by the law in the first place. So whatever laws already exist are already being flouted, and so tightening the screw legally isn't suddenly going to make them follow the laws that they've been ignoring the whole time. That's something that the morons who are bureaucrats simply do not understand. And for that reason, that it means they shouldn't be in power in the first place. So this whole talk around, taking guns away from people, even on the basis of self-defense, one of the arguments made by the state was that legal gun owners are then dispossessed of their legal firearms by those who have criminal intentions, of course. But they didn't actually provide those numbers to tell us exactly how many or what percentage of all firearms recovered were from dispossessed legal firearm owners. They won't, because they knew that if you actually out those numbers, they'll inadvertently reveal that many of the firearms used for crime are supposed to be in the hands of the police themselves. So they don't want to do that. At the same time, I believe that the reason the population has to be disarmed is because they want to instill a fear of the security cluster outright. And this is yet another thing that is quite the common theme with every single despot around the world. There's a pattern historically that says that, before they blame a minority group of some sort, they always look to disarm a population. And then they look for someone to delegate all blame to. Any social ill must be blamed on some form of minority. And when this blame is actually outed, it is typically done to a populace that is then that has been disarmed. That's how you quickly turn to a scenario where it is now okay to kill your fellow man if they are a minority, because they have been deemed responsible for everything that's wrong. And then secondly, the belief that getting rid of them somehow, either through deportation, through social ostracism, or even through murder, will then somehow bring back the prosperity that people look to bring back to their land. That's the common pattern throughout history. And if you look at patterns, you can't now assume that South Africa will be exempt from actually playing out that same script as has been played out in many other countries. So we need to stand against it, and we also need to demonstrate that we are not afraid of the security cluster. The reason policemen respect you is because there is a credible threat that you could actually retaliate. Now, if the police are the only people with guns, then there's a lot to be said that you won't be able to retaliate if you don't have cold metal in your hands and don't have a prospect of having cold metal in your hands either. So we need to retaliate, and we need to show that we are not afraid of the security cluster, irregardless of what kind of law Parliament or even the minister of the day would look to pass.
Hey, guys, on that point Koketso makes, there are few things and there are few people more polite to each other than two gun owners, lawful gun owners, who can spot, what's that expression from that movie, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps? A fisherman can always see another fisherman from afar, and you can always see another law-abiding gun owner from afar. We have a particular look. For me, it used to be Hawaiian shirts, but I'm not saying anything more than that. Anyway, Nolu, I want to come to you because there's the issue here that I found rather interesting, that ASAT, or pardon me, for those who don't know, the ASAT, of course, is reference to the police minister in this country, who literally wears a hat that looks like an ass. Basically says, as he releases the recent crime stats, well, he says, the current period under review of the crime stats were, quote, especially brutal for women and children. And this is where open quote says murder, attempted murder and assault with the intention to of grievous bodily harm of women all recorded double-digit increases in this period. Murder and assault, GBH, of children under the age of 17 also recorded sharp increases. Pardon me, goodness me. Tongue twister. Here's a guy who openly says, well, it's getting super bad for women in this country, but he stopped short of saying, actually, maybe as a police minister, one of the things I'll be lobbying for is to make it easier, not only for all South Africans, but especially women in this country, those who want it in particular, to get the training, to be able to purchase a firearm, and again, get the training over and over and over to make them more proficient in defending themselves. This weird suggestion that we often hear from the politicians and the feminist types, that women must beg men to stop the rape or stop the GBH, as they often tell us, is a weird narrative that we often hear persist in that part of the world.
Yeah, listen, I have multiple experiences of being robbed, essentially. I remember mine and I remember my dad's. I will never forget this. He was going to work in the wee hours of the morning and he had to pass through Inyanga. When he was there, they stabbed him 3 times. 3 times. And if my dad had not had a weapon, he would have died. I remember when I met him in hospital, I asked him, but Dada, why don't you give them the phone? And he was like, no, these are my things. No man is going to take anything from me. So number one, that I'd say that masculinity urge to fight, only he could do it. On my experience, on the other hand, and thank God, by the way, my dad is still alive and healthy. Number 2, I remember broad daylight when I used to stay in Mandalay, coming from some kind of a meeting. I was walking nearly just maybe those 15 steps away from my house. 2 guys came and they robbed me and they hit me, right? That day, that's when I decided that I'll never die for things, because I don't want to go through the trauma, as well as that when people want to take anything from you, then they first need to fight you. As a woman, it's very much traumatic. Where am I going? I really would love to have that training, Sihle, because at the end of the day, you do need to be armed or else you will die. Also, I think it's if our government will continue to fight the fact that we need guns, then I think, listen, there's knives in this house. I love cooking. I've got tons of them. Maybe I need to stash it in my bag whenever I go out. Maybe that will work. Even that way, they will then say that you can't stab somebody, you look like that. So for me, Sihla, whenever we talk about crime, it hits home. And I know how is it like to be in a community where you just feel so scared. Even now, where I stay, I can't just walk alone, I would always ask my partner, but dude, can you just come with me? Because you never know what you're going to come across. And that's the reality of South Africa. So I think we need to come up with this whole thing of I don't know if we need to listen to Begitele, who's surrounded by policemen and people with guns. I really become speechless when it comes to this thing. I can share my experiences, but one thing I know for sure, I want to be trained and I need to get a gun. It's as scary as that feeling it may be, but I need to do something with my life or else I'll never live freely in this country.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've all gotten to the point where you ask that fundamental question, which is scarier? You taking the responsibility of becoming a responsible, well-trained and trained often and trained all the time gun owner, or the ongoing fear that grips us of even walking down the street in this damn country. Chris, it has to turn to you at this point because, you know, we framed it in a South African context, but you guys are going through the same thing. And it frustrates me that you guys are, considering that you guys, if anything, have it enshrined in your constitution that to bear arms shall not be infringed. Yet here you have politicians, and again, I must say this, sadly, on both sides of the aisle, more so Democrats, but there are those rhinos in that part of the world who are saying, yeah, well, maybe we need to tinker with this gun control because that one will work, you know. And then when that doesn't work, as you look at most places that are run by Democrats, for example, Chicago et al., we then told, oh, no, we just need to double down on these laws because on the one hand, these are the two areas I want you to deal with. It'll stop the inner city crime if we just ban all guns and make it gun-free zones. And B, this is the nefarious one. Oh, look at the school shootings, they tell us. If only we didn't, if only we banned gun ownership in this country, or we had red flag laws, or any of the other myriad of interventions, then those poor kids, and God rest their soul, please, really, I'm not taking light of what happened there, but these politicians use these incidents to push these sort of legislations. And I've never seen a politician, Chris, especially a commie one, who hasn't favored gun control.
Yeah, let's just talk about where people have guns banned. Norway, a guy takes a rifle and kills nearly 200 Norwegians at an outdoor camping event. Auckland, New Zealand, a guy kills 54 Muslims at a mosque. Both places you're not allowed to have firearms. In Australia, where they disarmed the population, they promptly then began sticking them in concentration camps in Northern Territories. People who did not even test positive for the spicy cough were locked up in concentration camps because someone in the same building had tested positive, and they locked them up. The girl loses her job and she has no income and loses her apartment. Her life is destroyed. So this is what states do. And that's why the founding fathers of this country, when they wrote the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers against the Constitution, for the Constitution, those who wrote the Federalist Papers warned about the dangers of government, overpowerful government. They recognized that the greatest threat to liberty wasn't a foreign intrusion. It wasn't crime. It was the government itself and its overreach. And we see that around the world. 287,000 crimes committed with guns in the United States in 2021. Now, this according to the Federal Bureau of Incompetence, which I've renamed because they're idiots. But the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Incompetence, reports 287,000 gun crimes. 90% of those firearms were illicit. 90%. So what is a law going to do to stop 90% of those 287,000 crimes? We'd still have over 250,000 gun-related crimes if we had new laws taking weapons from all law-abiding citizen. That's the problem. This is not about public safety, ladies and gentlemen, and this is not some right-wing nut job. I'm a centrist, right of center on economic issues and some social issues. This is a reality. When you take firearms away from people, it's not about public safety. It's about state control of the individual, turning us into state wards and state serfs. That's the bottom line. They cannot point to one case in which taking away. I can show you clip after clip in South Africa of people who are armed, who are alive today because they reacted, because they were inculcated with firearms. They were taught to respect them as a deadly weapon. They were taught how to use them safely, and they're armed. And when someone tried to rob them, they responded and they fired back, not necessarily killing the assailants, but at least chasing them away. I can show you the same thing in the States. They never show the video clip of the guy who walked into a gun range where there was a class on firearm safety going on a few weeks ago, and he walked in. They were on a break. He walked up and sat down at a table, wasn't part of the class, started rifling through this guy's rucksack, which was under the table, which included his firearm, because he'd taken it off the table because that's unsafe to leave it laying on the table, put it in his bag. This guy goes and tries to get his firearm. The guy whose bag it was walks back and stops him. and other people intervene. He leaves the building. He walks outside. They call the police because he attempted to steal a firearm. While he's outside, I don't know what he's doing, waiting to steal another firearm or waiting for a ride. The police come up. Well, he doesn't have a firearm. So what does he do? He attempts to stab to death the female police officer, stabs her in the neck over her body armor. 3 people from inside who are trained in the use of firearms respond. They come out with their guns drawn in a safe manner. And the other police officer, once the female is able to pull herself away from the assailant who's trying to murder her, they all shoot him and he dies. So law-abiding citizens protect the public safety. This is not about public safety. That's a lie. That's a misnomer. And listen, we hear the nonsense from the joyless Behar and that idiotic show that's on the morning here. What's it called anyway? The View from Stupidity. Joyless Behar, these morons, and Whoopi Doofus Goldberg. I'm so sick of her now. She was funny 30 years ago. She needs to fade away now. The way the Black Americans armed. Hey, folks, 25% of Black American adults are legally licensed firearm owners. 1 out of 4 Black folks got guns already, brother. They already got guns, and you're not a problem. They're following the law. They're using the firearm for range practice, for sporting events, for hunting, for self-defense. They are not the problem. Once Black people get firearms, they already got firearms. This is all BS, just like voter ID is racist. Really? We're the only country in the world that doesn't require you to prove who you are when you vote. Anyway, I could go on for hours, but I got a whole 5 points here, Big Daddy. I'll let you get in there real quick.
And here's the thing that really
it's your show.
Here's the thing that really irks me, and I want to relegate it for a moment because, guys, usually we end the show at this point.
No, you don't. You always run over, brother. Don't fib.
Just another 15 minutes, please, from everybody. Then we must shut it off at that point, guys, if everybody's okay with that. And let me submit here in terms of this particular point. We have an awful situation here where. Sorry, I'm trapped by my own sentence construction. Let me take 2 steps back. As I said at the beginning of this, no criminal gives a flying fudge about something called gun control or gun laws or anything like that. I know in my township of Imlaz, I know exactly where to get a illegal, often a Norinco 9mm pistol, pardon me, these QS7s, the 92s, if I'm not mistaken, cheaply imported into this country, and they flood the streets. I know exactly where to get one of those if I wanted an illegal firearm, and often it's mostly to rent these firearms. I know exactly where to rent an AK-47. And I mean it. And I've even seen, in fact, I happen to know one of the chaps who rents these out to hardened criminals. I know where you can get grenades in some parts of the township, and really not so much grenades these days, but more explosives, commercial explosives that are often used in cash in transit criminality in this country. This, for me, is the reality for most South Africans. We know where these criminals are in most cases. We know what they are armed with. And now you have a state that says, you know what? No, we're not going to allow you to have firearms in order to be able to defend yourself from those guys. Number one. Number two, and this is where it gets sad for me, Chris. I'll have you chip in on this a little later. You have a situation where these people will stand on the graves of murder victims, and literally from that pulpit, that pulpit of shame, if I can call it that, they will literally then push the very policies that will contribute to the further murder, if you will, of fellow, in your case, Americans, in our case, South Africans. Begitele doesn't give a flying fudge. He doesn't give a flying fudge when he pushes these sort of legislation, knowing that it's someone like me or a fellow South African who has a bullet with their name out there from some criminal, who's looking to target me in this particular instance. Let me come back to you, Jonathan, for a moment as we really wrap up, guys. And this will be final take on this. In South Africa in particular, we face the additional specter of riot season. And one of the things I wanted to raise here was on Friday, South Africa had this hashtag national shutdown that trended on social media. And the spill-off of it played out in the streets of South Africa, in Durban in particular, where on Friday evening, there was scenes of looting in that part of the world, which scarred so many Durbanites because it was a hark back to what happened last year in July. And the question I'm asking is, is this not just the beginning? What we saw on Friday, is this not just the beginning of what we can expect going forward? I want to show 2 clips of this, Jonathan, and then I'll come to you as we then argue that actually maybe it's now time the state multiplies its own force of law-abiding people to maybe fight back against the sort of lawlessness which is on the horizon. Stand by, guys, as I play the short clip. Always takes a moment, and maybe as it does take a moment, a reminder, please hit that like button and share this stream. There. I'll play the other one. That one wasn't too clear. Just give me a moment, folks. This, of course, is imagery courtesy of journalist Sihle Mavoso on his social media. There was another clip. Here it is. A large police contingent, of course, in the center of the CBD as ShopRite and other storefronts in Durban were pilfered and looted. Scenes playing themselves out, of course, on Friday evening. These are images courtesy of people obviously who were on the ground. But again, thankfully, in this instance, the police were relatively well prepared for this. But again, we will have a situation, Jonathan, where it'll return to what it was last time, where the police simply weren't well prepared.
Are you waiting for my input there? Okay, so sorry, yeah. Absolutely. The last year's Durban riots were something that we hadn't really seen before in South Africa. And I remember we kind of spoke a little bit about this when you chatted to Gideon and I, actually just a couple of meters through that window when you were last year. Lockdown had just started, and we knew what this was going to mean: rising prices, expensive fuel, inflation, and all the rest. And sure enough, the Durban riots happened, and now things have only gotten worse since that time. They only can, as far as I can see it, they can only get worse. And I mean, the past 2-3 years, I have really come to sympathize with uprisings. Not to say that I want to go and do it, but I understand the anger that people can feel towards the government, or just to get their frustrations out. They're poor, they can't get a job, they can't get food. Remember the Egypt bread riots, and they realize something's got to change. They don't know what to do, and so in South Africa, violent protest is a very popular thing. But the Durban thing was a bit more than just a violent protest. It was quite a scary thing, and I think that was a bit of just a taste of what's coming our way. I don't see how it can't get worse. There's just too much at stake. We are so far down the road, and something's got to break at some point, and I don't know what it is or when. But there are the rumblings, as you say. This little thing, is it a taste of something more to come? I think probably. I should also add on the Durban riots last year, it was legal gun owners that were the ones holding the fort down for a large part of that in significant areas. The police were nowhere to be found. The army was nowhere to be found. Metro police were nowhere to be found. So communities had to band together. They had to make barricades, roadblocks, checkpoints, and they're walking around with their shotguns, their handguns. I sold a shotgun back in October, November last year. A guy who bought it from me explicitly said he was concerned about the Durban riots that had just happened because he lives near Durban, and this is why he's buying the shotgun. He wanted it to protect himself should that sort of thing happen again. And as much as I regret selling it, I don't think he regrets buying it. And I hope that it serves him well. It keeps him and his family safe. Did you get all that, Sihle?
Yeah, apologies for that. I just had to get myself back on the stream. I think I'm on. You'll
Oh,
let
we
me know
see
if
you.
You're on. You're on. You're on.
There
We
we go.
see you.
Sorry. But Koketso, I wanted to come to you, and guys, final comments from everybody as we wrap up the show. Because for me, this will be the make or break for South Africa going forward. We simply cannot continue, number one, Koketso, with these sort of crime levels, period. I don't care who's in government. I don't care, what douchebag is the police minister. What we need now is pure competence from the very beginning, from the very top, pardon me, to the very bottom of the echelons of law enforcement in this country, from the political leadership to the actual civil servant leader who's at the top cop, basically, to the very guy who patrols your streets. And seemingly, we're not in a direction where we're going to get any of that. And then if that is the case, more armed civilians, good law-abiding people, sane, sober, moral, prudent type South Africans need to be given the freedom, the liberty, if you will, to become gun owners.
Yeah, so I'll start by disagreeing with Jonathan a bit. So, yeah, I will absolutely not sympathize with uprisings or uprisers. I don't know what the correct word is. For two things. Firstly, I have a biblical worldview. And secondly, based off of that, I believe in morality over and above everything. So irrespective of one's personal belief, religion, whatever they subscribe to, I believe in morality. Based on that, I find it absolutely immoral to take your grievance and go and harm someone else's livelihood because you are not being served as according to your needs and as according to your rights by the government. The person who owns an honest business, they could be selling fast food, they could be selling clothes, shoes, doesn't matter. They have nothing to do with the government not giving you service delivery. And so when you then, in your anger, in your pain, in your anguish, in your poverty, in your hunger, then decide that I'm going to set alight their business as a means of displaying or expressing my dislike for the government or as a means of protest, right? That is immoral for me. And I can't justify it, condone it in any way. And people who do that should have the book thrown at them. So then the question is, what is the actual solution? Well, I'm going to bring an example of, I believe it's Sri Lanka, where, they've also not had a great time due to due to lockdowns more than anything and government policies around handling the pandemic. What the people there have done is actually go after the politicians themselves. They have literally, you've had crowds of people, according to some videos, going to the politicians in their offices, in their places of residence, and physically removing them from the office and putting them in a town square like scenario where they are asking them to actually explain themselves and explain why they have done what they have done in their so-called management of the pandemic. That to me tells me that these are honest people who know to go after the source, the root of the problem, and not necessarily become anarchists who are willing to burn down the next man's private property and make life a living hell for someone else because they feel that they shouldn't be suffering alone. So based on that, I believe in morality, and we really should look for moral solutions. And for that, we require a level of maturity that says that take your grievances through to the government and leave other people the hell alone. It's not worth taking away our morality as a society as a means of either ousting the ruling party or expressing our grievances. It's not a good way to do things, and I absolutely cannot stand behind it. We shouldn't be having this conversation, according to me, but based on that, again, allow people to defend themselves, not just from the government, but in this case, with the context I just laid out, allow people to defend themselves even from each other. Because again, even as a man, you owe it to your family to step up and do what men do.
And again, I don't mind the disagreement, guys. It's very, very welcome. And Jonathan, if you don't want to respond, I'll give you 30 seconds to that. And then I'll move to Chris.
Yeah, I think my choice of words was poor, and I think that maybe Koketso's understanding them was, I don't want to call them poor if my words were poor. It's not his fault that there's a bit of anything lost in translation there. He's absolutely right. There is no excuse for the sort of thing happening. And typically, as far as uprisings go, you mentioned the Sri Lanka case where the people rose up and they decided to take it out on their politicians, which I would happily agree with. That is exactly what South Africans that are disgruntled should be doing. It isn't the business owner that employs one or two people down the road that is the cause of their problems, and they shouldn't bear the brunt of that unhappiness at all. So yeah,
Absolutely. Because Chris, I'm going to throw it to you because there's two things I wanted to chew on. Guys, I must remind you, we're short on time. In fact, it's actually run out. And it's a bit unfair to you, Chris, but it is what it is. But that notion of selective morality, as is the case definitely in America, where you look, for example, the left, right, burns things, destroys institutions in that part of the world, threatens, not constitutional court, Supreme Court judges in your part of the world. Not a big issue, according to the political elites and the corporate media. The moment you hear anything from a so-called right-winger, all hell breaks loose, shut down everything, blah, 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 you name it. You can't build a society like this, Chris, on the one hand. And if you're not going to build a society like this, at least have it be self-sufficient and able to defend itself when these sort of riots break out again.
Well, the sort of things that have been happening in South Africa have found their way to this shore. Fees must fall nonsense, free ride for everybody, no consideration of how the real world works. And the constant race hustling is now become part of the vernacular and the daily fabric of our society here. 85% of the people who appear in commercials in this country are Black or mixed race. Yet they make up only 13.5% of the population. Am I angry about that? No, that's ridiculous, because for years I'm hearing about people not being properly represented. Well, talk about overrepresentation. The white Anglo-Saxon male is never in an ad unless he's there for erectile dysfunction or he's the butt of the joke. But as far as the issue, I was going to come up and defend Jonathan very quickly there. But what I want to say about Koketso had to say is that this is why I respect and like people of faith, of all faiths, of Judaism, of Islam, Buddhism, Christianity. People of faith are moral people by and large, and they believe in a moral base. And my faith is a personal thing. I'm not a churchgoer. I'm not a religious person, but I respect people like Koketso because of their morality, which is something I share with them. This is the problem in South Africa, this vigilantism that's taking place. Another murder yesterday at 10 o'clock at night in Limpopo. A woman who is suspected of a disappearance of a man 2 weeks ago is drugged behind her car to her death. They burn her house and burn her car. The cops, rocks are thrown at them to prevent them. We had a 31-year-old ride-sharing guy murdered in the Western Cape last week because vigilantes, the gangsters, got out and said, he's the one that kidnapped the girls. You cannot take the law into your hands. That is not acceptable morally or legally. That and this vigilantism is taking place all over South Africa because people are frustrated with the law is unacceptable. And xenophobia is another problem. This is wrong. People are Homo sapiens. The xenophobia against other people is something really bad. Let me finish with two things really quickly there, Big Daddy. And that is in America, they want to now ban people who are 18 years old from buying firearms. Well, at 17, you can enlist in the military with your parents' permission, and you can fire a tank round at the enemy. You can go to combat and die for your country, fire machine guns and automatic weapons at will. But when you come home, you can't have a firearm to defend yourself or to go to the range. The cognitive dissonance and the stupidity involved in that is off the charts. And then finally, South Africa has over nearly 700,000 people employed in the private sector security services. And look how violent and dangerous South Africa is with 68 murders every day. South Africa, a country with 60 million people, has thousands of more murders per year than the United States with 350 million people. It's shocking to say the least. It is absolutely shocking. I got a whole host of ways to solve this and where it all started for back in 1980s, but we don't have time for that, so I'll save it for the next broadcast. And thank you very much, Cyril.
And as what we must have you back on, brother. It's been too long, actually. And really, final word goes to Nolu on this one. Nolu, it's I don't know what more to say, really. We've gotten to a point where we really have to begin to have that honest conversation, and really beyond the conversation, honest action as South Africans, to say here and no further. No more will I accept the shooting, killing, stabbing, strangling, whatever of loved ones, simply because we must follow bad policy from politicians. It's really time South Africans really band together in communities, band together as families, and push back and say, yeah, no further.
Yeah, that will be great, but then we are the same people that are being divided by the politicians. That's number one. And number two, the sinful nature of individuals, also going back to what Koketso was saying, it's what actually happens. Whenever there is, I would say, shortage of resources among people, then envy is bound to come up. And that is why you find people that want to go to the next door person and say, why do we have food if I don't have food? Going back to the whole thing in Durban. And I'm also curious as why is it everywhere, black people are the ones who are always burning down things. I know it's not part of this topic, but I'm just curious because at the end of the day, that it really just speaks about us. But again, I just hate how these shutdowns, whatever you want to call them, they've become a norm now because they're absolutely not good for our country and we can't continue like this. So for me, I would say we need to get ourselves armed. And I remember saying that even to people who are owning businesses in Ekasi, please arm yourself because your business they will come for you. Another young man was killed who was running a business, employing people, and he's dead now. So you just need to arm yourself, or else someone else will be jealous of you and they will kill you. So that's a society we're living in, and we need to be active and proactive about that.
Guys, as always, don't worry. I always give everybody that last opportunity in 20 seconds or so just to say, how do the folks find you on your social media? Because we have reached the end of tonight's show. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to go around the house here. Final comment, and of course, how do the folks find you? Jonathan, final comment, and how do the folks find you on your social media if you want to be found? You're muted.
So I am unmuted now. So you can find me on Twitter at Jonathan HFW. That's my very long name, slightly abbreviated. And if I may just throw in, I don't have any other social media that I really want to be found on. But as far as last words go for myself, I would have to absolutely agree with Nolu there and say, whether you live in the United States or South Africa, go and buy a gun. Buy lots of them.
Absolutely.
If you live in South Africa, start the process. Go and buy the proficiency material, do the competency, start that 4-month wait, get it out of the way.
Absolutely. That, of course, is Jonathan out in, what is it, Somerset West area, Jonathan?
Yeah, Somerset West.
Good to have you on, brother. I'm in Cape Town, of course, for quite a while, so we'll definitely link up at some stage.
Yes, we must.
Hey, man, take me to the range, homie. Let's go do some pew-pew stuff.
Yeah, that 2-2 rifle wants to meet you.
Absolutely, and I definitely want to meet it.
It's a lot of fun. Oh my goodness, it's a lot of fun.
And of course, it's with Jonathan Wright out in the Somerset West area. Nolu, how do the folks find you on your social media?
I'm excited because we've just launched a podcast. Of course, it's called the Nolu Maki Podcast Show. You can find it on Apple and Spotify for now, and we also have one short clip on YouTube. As well as you can find me on Getter. I'm there with those Americans there. Rumble as well, Americans there. And Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Everywhere, you'll find me there. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Excellent. And thank you for being on here. I didn't know you'd launched your own show. We need to have a chat, of course. I might make a visit out there in the panel. I have some plans cooking on the BDL show that might benefit you, of course, and would love to have you be a part of the works here on the channel. And thank you, of course, to Nolu Maki out in the panel for having joined us. Koketso Putwami, how do the folks find you on your social media, and what can we expect on the Manpatria show tomorrow at 7 p.m.?
Yeah, you can treat the Manpatria show as an extension of much of what we were talking about today. Maybe a bit more topics as well. Correction, we now start at 7:30 instead of 7. And yeah, we're keeping the show nice and short this time around. So yeah, it's a quick fire on a Monday night. Catch us 7:30 tomorrow. That's myself, Dumo, and Nzuzo. Best way to get hold of me seems to be my Twitter timeline. I'm getting several DMs a day from strangers, some even wanting to meet up for a coffee. So yeah, I'm open to that. And my final thought, everyone, you can't trust the people who scorch the earth to, after the fact, start planting seeds. That's not exactly the same kind of person. So keep that in mind when people are calling for, revolutionary change and for burning of this and for burning of that. That's not someone who builds, that's someone who destroys, and that's not who you want in a position of leadership for the country at large.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is Koketso Resane, of course, 1/3 of the fellas out at Manpatria. That's on Mondays, of course, at 7:30. Make sure you catch them tomorrow. And of course, last but not least, Chris, how do the folks find you on your socials and what's on the show this week? Chris, you're muted. Let me just unmute you. Go ahead.
Cyril, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. No, I have mute here. I can turn my mic off. It goes black, so you don't have to always turn me off. But anyway, yeah. So, Cyril, thanks a lot. Appreciate you asking me to come on the show. But lately, I was actually headed out to do some videos. But thanks for that, folks. Can find me on Chris White Africa on here on PooTube, where they're terrified of my bona fides and they shadow ban me. Still trying to recover from last year's abuse by the network. But you can find me on here, Rumble. You can find me on Odyssey. Also, I'm on Twitter, but that's a different handle. Gitter as well as all these other places, and TikTok. But the big place to find me is find me on YouTube, Chris White Africa, and then you'll find me everywhere else. I had a question for Jonathan. I was wondering, he said everybody go out and get guns and get lots of them. So I was asking, I wanted to ask, is 30 rifles and shotguns enough? I'm just curious if that'll meet the need.
Jonathan's laughing in the background there. Maybe I'll have you guys back on, by the way, together.
But you asked what was on for this week. Let me just really quickly, because I got a big guest coming on tomorrow. So Monday, I've got Colonel Vine Dutoy, who will be on with me tomorrow. We do the Fireside with the Colonels. That's an episodic, usually every fortnightly, but we haven't done it in a month because I was in London and then came back and went to Texas. So Colonel Vine Dutoy will be on tomorrow at noon, South Africa time. And then on Tuesday, former Springbok coach Henneke Meyer, Stade Francais coach, Dragons coach, and Bulls legend Henneke Meyer will be my guest at a special time at 8 p.m. South Africa time on Tuesday. And hopefully we'll get back to our other programming now that I'm back in town. So thanks a lot for the opportunity to share that.
Brother, good to have you on. That is, of course, Chris White of the Chris White Africa Show, as we say goodbye to him. And we'll say goodbye to you, dear viewer. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Liberty and Friends. We come to you every Sunday evening at 8 p.m., of course. It is a 90-minute show. We sometimes stretch it out to be 2 hours because it's the one long format show that I have. Thank you. A big thank you to all the moderators in the comment section. I really appreciate it, guys. And a reminder to you guys, and I echo the sentiments of everybody on this, guys, take that moment, get your proficiency, go and become a responsible gun owner who often trains all the time, so that you can be defense minded, and of course defend yourself and your loved ones and your families. Us, the good, sober, sane, moral, prudent South Africans, those faith, flag, family, and freedom type South Africans. I'll be doing the same thing. I'm going for my proficiency and will be getting my license hopefully once everything is pashash in that regard. With that being said, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment. As always, I do go through your comments, and hit that like button on the way out. And if you want to support the show, more details on that are coming. Guys, lots of changes are coming to the show. We're busy right now with editing guys, production guys. There's some brand and marketing guys who are helping me. We're talking to some web designers. We're developing merchandise on the show. Woo! Guys, good stuff is coming, and I'm hoping to launch all of this wonderful stuff by the end of this month. So that's in a couple of weeks. Look out for that. And of course, your support has been absolutely instrumental in that. And guys, I really encourage you to continue supporting the show. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Your favorite Zulu Jew is on his way out. We're reminding you, as I always do at the end of every broadcast, for you to never, and I really mean it, never trust a commie.